Just like Kristjan to leave me here to do these on the first one. But let's thank John Deere, the sponsor for Truth About Ag podcast. Is all your farm data in one place so you could actually find it? That's where John Deere Operations Center comes in. Available online 24/7. Use it to plan, work, keep records, and analyze results so you can reduce errors and make smarter decisions for next season. Plus, it's free to set up and try out. See why thousands of farmers already trust it on their operations at johndeere.ca/precisionag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag. Welcome back to the Truth About Ag podcast, powered by the Hebert Group of Companies and distributed under the Real Agriculture Media Network. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and may leave your comments. So, number one thing for today, Hebes, no chair.
I was wondering if you'd get rid of it.
Well, I think I had to now, didn't I? So we get to release finally. First sponsor. We are bringing on John Deere as our first sponsor. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. When we started this podcast journey, we didn't really have any plans of any sponsorship. It was just we didn't really like paid media and kind of wanted to talk about some of this stuff. So if we ever did do it, it's going to be with companies that we align with. And obviously, John Deere's a fairly big part of our operation. I'm not saying I love the price of equipment. I'm not saying I like the price of equipment, but when it comes to Operations Center and the growth there and what they're doing in the industry, it's a group that we're probably going to be in discussions with for the rest of my career and how they can help agriculture. So it's exciting.
Well, and I think the big thing with them is the discussion. I mean, the sponsorship's not based on what we say. I mean, they want us to come out and talk about their products, but at the same time, they want us to be real. So, I mean, The big one for us was this wasn't just a sales pitch. It was more or less somebody we believe in and somebody they actually believe in us to actually that we utilize their product, right?
If someone was trying to buy what I say, that means I'd have to prep before I came on here, which would be almost impossible.
Yeah. And you're not going to, so.
Never. Nope.
Okay. I want to cover one thing from my side. So I do want to actually give a little shout out to FCC. So we did some of our farmer coach workshops across Canada. And to be fair, sold out Portage, sold out Listel, and sold out Moose Jaw. And I believe they're looking for more seats in Moose Jaw and Listel, but I am looking forward to the two. And Portage went really well. So, I can't thank FCC enough for bringing us in and letting us show farms some of the farmer coach curriculum. And then I can't thank the producers enough for coming out and, I mean, at least hearing what we say, and whether they take it or not, that's kind of up to them. But it kind of gives me a positive sign that it's maybe not just fear, and some guys are actually thinking maybe there's a way to be different. So,
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Tight times always make everybody look at their operation, but I think what we're seeing is that tight times can create opportunities, and it also forces you to have a good look at all your expenses and where you can clean them up. And so you have to take that opportunity too. So it's always encouraging to see. I mean, we always say our favorite producers is those that want to help themselves, right? They're not coming to Farmer Coach for us to really help them. We're maybe guiding, and then they're running with it. So I always get super excited about people that want to help themselves be better.
Best story before I jump into the next one. I'm down speaking at Williston last week, and I was out in the crowd, and I was playing a bit, and I said, well, what's your best crop in North Dakota? I haven't been down here enough. And the guy, all I hear from the back is effing oil. Okay, I'm going to have to tell that story. So
yeah. If you could learn how to plant derricks, would have been a good thing in the Bakken.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to bring this up once, and then I'm going to let it die because I've done it enough on social media. Obviously, Daryl started let's call it what it is. He started a shitstorm of sales pitches from the real estate industry and real estate guys talking about leverage and liquidity. And what are your thoughts on the real estate industry jumping on the train here? And B, are they right? I mean, are we seeing more farms just take that plunge now that guys may be scared?
Yeah, I mean, they can go ahead and do their jobs. They're sales guys. I guess here's my opinion. Agriculture runs in cycles. We're going into a tighter year the average age of farmers has not got younger. It's pushing 60. And it's always been when things get tighter, farmers start wondering, should I lock in my equity right now, or should I risk it another year or another 2 years? And so my personal opinion, there's a lot of tire kickers wondering what their land's worth. But there's also a bunch of people that really don't want to put all their money in the stock market or T-bills either. So, yeah, I think the marketing spree by the real estate group is definitely trying to fill their coffers with land for sale, because it hasn't been that easy over the last 5-6 years. The odd packages for sale, but nothing significant. But I don't think there's lots and lots of blocks for sale personally, and some of the stuff that's went up for rent, I also haven't seen rents dropping. So it's the typical thing. We'll know in 12 months, right? And I don't have a crystal ball.
No. My two favorites are that right now, obviously with the consulting side, we've run a significant amount of land deals in the last 6 months. And for everybody listening, they have all been over ask. And there's rent that I just looked at a farm that was 170 plus. So are we seeing the demise right now? No. So from that standpoint of the real estate guys saying it's dropping 20, 30%, I'm not seeing it. Not saying I've got the crystal ball, Same as you. I just don't believe it yet. The other one is, the best part is, they're probably a little bit butthurt, to be fair, because Daryl did it over social media. And I mean, not that every farmer has the ability to do that, because he's obviously got a following, but he's proving that you can start a bidding war and do it yourself. So I think that's part of it as well, to be fair.
Well, and I would also encourage everybody to do a little research on how the world of farmland trades outside of Canada. So if you go down into the US, where there's multiple banks, like thousands or hundreds of thousands, you see farms go up for sale all the time because the bank says, I no longer trust your appraisal. And so they put them up for sale to get a real bid, and then they go to the next bank and do their refinance. And it's super normal in a lot of countries around the world. But because we only have 4 or 5 banks, in a lot of cases, banks are syndicated on farms, we lose that leverage in Canada. It's an issue. There's not enough capital in agriculture in Canada. So, before you're in Tim Hortons having a coffee, talking about failure, and I told you so, just maybe do a little research on how some of this business stuff goes on around the world, and don't be surprised if you see some guys that you thought were maybe on the failure track. You'll check them out in 3 years and realize they just pivoted a little bit and are more successful than they even are now.
Yeah, AKA it's called fixing balance sheets. So,
yeah,
my last one, because I'm going to give a teaser here. We've obviously got the interview with Scott Moe coming on here in a couple minutes, and I am excited for that one coming up. But crop insurance subsidy, I wouldn't say I started a shitstorm, but I definitely took a little pushback on social media. For me, the post that I put out was more or less that the new pricing on crop insurance, especially in Manitoba right now, looks a little high based on the futures market right now, and that might resemble a bit of a subsidy versus us throwing stones at supply management as much as we do. So give me your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I mean, can't say I'm the biggest believer in supply management either, but I always talk about both sides, that we can't throw supply management under the bus and then not talk about crop insurance subsidies. So one's the price. Number one, producers, just remember that the price actually doesn't mean anything unless you grow a bushel or two under your thing. So don't get too caught up on it. Number two, between where prices are set, and then, I've been lucky enough to see the actuarial data on crop insurance through the Global Ag Risk Days. And so I know that the $9, $10, $12, $13 that lots of producers pay for 70 or 80% is about $29 short. So I think it's just one thing to, am I a believer that we need some sort of disaster insurance when it comes to farming and agriculture? Absolutely. Do I think we should be real quick in production agriculture to talk about other subsidies and not have spent the time figuring out how much government money goes into some of the things we have? No, I think that would be a little immature.
Well, and let's be fair, BRM's 80% of the budget last time I checked? Was I wrong?
Yeah, 67 to 80% is of the federal budget, depending on obviously how big the risk is. And I mean, if we want to get really into it, that's where people need to start to look, is that the rainy day funds are almost gone in the majority of provinces when it comes to crop insurance. And so any large payouts now that there isn't full reinsurance coverage, which the minute you're going to offer to everybody, it's almost impossible to get full reinsurance coverage, is going to start showing up in the general revenue fund of every government. And cost of productions are twice as high as they used to be. So these numbers are twice as high as they used to be for governments too. And agriculture would be less than 1%. Production agriculture will be less than 1% of the federal vote. So I think we need to be innovative on how we work through government strategies, probably how we let private to start playing this market a little bit more, because I truly believe we're going to need more options in the future. And that's just my personal belief.
And I think there's always been that mindset that food security is going to save us in the end because we need food. But I think we sometimes forget that 30% of the food goes to waste right now, and stocks are at an all-time high, and everything else that comes along with this. So not that I want to buy into that fear side of agriculture, but at the same time, it is a real data and it's real stats. So could BRM take a hit? I like you said, it's 1% of the vote.
Well, and I think because we spend so much time in it, it jades us a little bit, right? Like the general producer hates agriculture, or hates agri-stability. Actually, even the general politician does, and yet
I can't even win that conversation with.
And if we sit down and have coffee, like you and I love it. It's the cheapest insurance you can buy, and on any farms that have had success in the last 5 years, it's probably the best coverage you have, right? And then we go to Agri-Invest, and I mean, it pisses me off. We give free money to farmers, and then farmers complain. But I think there's some pretty cool things we could do with Agri-Invest on tax planning. And then lastly, on crop insurance, like I said, it's just, my urge is just everybody take the time to understand what it truly costs to run those programs versus what you pay versus what you have for coverage. And then I think we can have some great conversations of where these things should go in the future. But we get jaded by, farms pay $10, that must be all it costs, and so we should have better coverage. But you and I spend so much time in BRM and risk management, and we encourage people to spend so much time understanding it that it's sometimes hard to have those conversations.
Well, let's be fair. I mean, I run a private crop insurance product through Maverick as a commission statement. And I'm still the first one to tell you that agri-stability is by far the top program in Canada. And is it for everybody? No. I mean, no. If you got mixed, diverse farms, no, because you've essentially risk mitigated yourself by having diverse operations. But I mean, for 2025, it was a 10% deductible. Yeah. If you had any crop in the last 5, it's an Olympic average. So it actually drops off the low, drops off the high. And in the end, the $6 million cap makes it way more usable by farms of even the average size in Saskatchewan now is getting to be larger. So they've played into your handbook. So, I mean, you can disagree with us all you want. Just make sure you actually know the numbers before you disagree with us, because that's all I'm asking.
Well, and I argue both sides of the story. I mean, I'm going to be in Ottawa next week, and I'm going to say with my producer hat on, I goddamn love 90% agri-stability. Right? 70% of my last 3 years, or my Olympic 3-year average margin, covers my costs basically, and I get 90 cents on the dollar. It's fantastic. And with the caps, it actually means something. Then I'm going to flip my other hat on and be like, okay, if I was walking in this room as an advisor to the federal government, I think you've lost your mind. You can't afford 2011 or 2014 or 2022 again with a 90% $6 million cap. So I like I said, I have no problem with people wanting crop insurance, wanting agri-stability, and I try to really tell the things I like about the programs and look at the other side. It's just, even in the next podcast, we talk about needing investment and innovation and different ways to doing things. And I think technologies is going to bring some really cool stuff in the world of finance and insurance and agriculture. And we just need to have an open mind and make sure we really do understand the way the current programs work.
Okay, let's pivot and get into the discussion with Mr. Moe.
Sounds good.
So another thank you to our podcast sponsor, John Deere. Ever wish all your farm data was in one place? That's John Deere Operations Center. Plan work, keep records, analyze results, all online. Free to set up. See why thousands of farmers trust it at johndeere.ca/precisionag. Okay, so I don't even know how to start this one. Is it honorable? Is it Premier Moe? Is it Scott? What do we call you for the next 45 minutes to an hour?
Well, it's Scott, and I can already see that I didn't get the memo, and I need someone to go find me a black hat. We're on a black hat interview here, and I don't have a black hat. So someone in my office see if I have a black hat.
Well, to make it fair, our backgrounds are nowhere near as nice as yours. So, but
He's got better hair than both of us too.
that's why the hats are on.
It's leaving and changing color.
Very rapidly lately, I'm assuming.
More changing color.
All right, so I want to start this, Scott. I want you to go down and give us your history, because we like diving back before we pummel you with the questions on the political side. So give us the history of Scott Moe.
Well, I grew up on a mixed farm, the oldest of 5 kids, just outside of Shelburne, between Shelburne and Parkside, Saskatchewan, and I did everything that. What a blessing, might I say that, to be able to grow up on a farm and just do all the things that so many kids did in rural Saskatchewan. Biking to school and just all of the trouble and shenanigans that we did, and all the lessons that can provide you with in your first 20 years of life. And so, I was really blessed with my upbringing, and the family that I had. I went on to university. My wife and I were married. We were pretty young when we were married. I guess we were 19 or 18 years old, and started our family fairly young as well. And went out upon graduating university, through the College of Agriculture at our beloved University of Saskatchewan. We went out and sold farm equipment for a few years. I was involved in some custom application, some primary production through my university years. And then we moved back to the town that raised us. I was out in Alberta for 3 years. That's where I actually got interested in politics, which we can come back to in a moment. And then we were fortunate enough to move back to our hometown in Shelburne, Saskatchewan, and raise our family there. My wife and I both got into different businesses until 2011, and I worked as a volunteer on various political campaigns in the lead up to 2011, when I got the bright idea that I might want to run myself, and the next thing I know, I'm talking to you guys on a podcast, and I have no black hat.
It was one of my questions, Evan. I always have to ask the people in the political sphere, and I mean you're at the epitome of it in the provinces. You got to explain to me what drives you to do it, because I have a lot of respect for those that can handle it. But when we watch social media comments and I mean you just hope to make most of the people happy. It's never going to be all the people. It takes a different type of drive and personality. So walk us through what made you interested in politics, and then obviously the plunge to run.
Yeah, I maybe I'll work that backwards just a little bit. At first, don't go on social media. I don't spend a lot of time on there. It's essentially a billboard for a politician, in my view, and you put your message up, and there's going to be good and bad graffiti that gets written on it over the course of a few hours, and then you put up a new message.
It means he's not reading the comments.
Yeah, don't. You might want to look at them for a little bit of tone, but if you start reading into them, you're going to realize that some friends don't like you as much as you thought they did, and all those sorts of things. But you do need to be fairly tough and have a fairly thick skin to the criticisms, I think, that come to all politicians. And one thing I would ask and hope is that people do realize that politicians are also people. And they have families, and they do have feelings, and as tough as they need to be, they're very real people as well. And I can attest to that, being one of them and working with many of them. But you do need to be tough, and you do need to be determined, and you need to be able to work with a number of other people, both elected and unelected, in our case across the province, to really move the needle on what the vision for the future is for our industries, in the provincial case, our communities, healthcare delivery, those types of things. And so you do have to be very determined and very passionate in what it is you want to do. What really got me started in politics, and I'll just maybe say 2 steps to this. One, we were in Vermilion, Alberta, my wife and I, when we were young, and I was able to see through the Ralph Klein days, some of what was happening different in Alberta versus Saskatchewan. And I noticed that, politics actually does matter, and the policies that politicians come forward with really do matter. We had a change in our local politician at the time, Steve West, who was the finance minister in the Klein government, retired, and Lloyd Snellgrove, who became the finance minister, came in. And that's where I really, for the first time, got involved in a political nomination and election to some degree. We moved home then after that. I got involved federally and provincially as a volunteer, and then ultimately ended up here. But why I ran in 2011 was I started to see in some of our regional communities a little bit of friction, or call it the traditional hockey battles, where I could see at times communities were thinking, well, if community A gets something, that means community B is going to have to sacrifice something. And it was an either or conversation that was setting up. And I've never truly believed that. I've always believed that, we're going to, as communities, and I would say as provinces and as a nation, we're going to succeed together or we're going to fail together. And we need to be working and approaching, the challenges that we face, and they're different at the community level, provincial level, federal level. We need to, approach those challenges with that in mind, that we can all win here, and we can grow the size of the pie, whatever that pie is, whether it's, healthcare services, education services, whether it's the general economy and the various sectors that are creating wealth and employing people. And so when I ran, it was very much, looking at the region of the province I come from, and what can I bring to this conversation to, bring communities together and really start working together for the success of our region, as opposed to the success of one community in spite of another. And I think so. That was 2011. If you think of what has happened in regions of the province since 2011. I think that theory has certainly been a valuable one for me to bring to the various levels of the provincial government that I truly have had the honor to serve in. And then I would just close with, what drives me today is, and it seems, maybe a little bit of a proverbial answer or a canned answer, but it's a true commitment that I try to bring to this job each and every day. Is we have a whole new generation out there that, I'm now my dad's generation, so I complain about the younger generation, the same way that my father complained about me and all of my friends. However, when you actually engage with, the youth of today, man, are they talented, and access to information. I mean, they can find information in minutes that, I still would take me days to find today. And when I was their age, it just simply wasn't available. They are dealing with a whole different set and suite of, I would say, challenges, but also opportunities relative to what I had to deal with at that age, for sure. And so I think anything that we do today that really sets up the opportunity for, those I call them kids, but 20, 25, 30-year-old individuals that are, for the first time in many years, have the opportunity to really look at Saskatchewan as being a place where they're going to have a great career and raise their family. Anything that we can do to just elevate their opportunities and their chances, that's good for Canada. It's good for Saskatchewan, but it's also good for each and every community across this province, right from the far north down to the the southern portions of our province. And I think we have a lot of tools here in this province when I look across Canada and everything we're dealing with today to, really have faith that we're going to be very, very successful. Despite the challenges and the uncertainty, we're going to be very, very successful in Saskatchewan in the medium to long term.
So I know Kristjan's got a long list of questions, but I want to start with one, because for the last 2 years, all I've heard is Kristjan's side of COP28 and his opinions on how it went. So I want your opinion on how COP28 went for you, and then how it was bringing an actual farmer into Dubai and letting him loose on them. So,
well, he had his black hat on, so it was hot. So if you'd asked me that question prior to going to China here a month ago, I would say the COP28, we go on a lot of trade missions, and you always don't get some tangible results when you come home. COP28 we did on all fronts, whether it was investment coming into Saskatchewan, whether it was the opportunity that we had to, in a very unapologetic way, go to a climate change conference and entirely use it as a, marketing the sustainability and how ethically we produce food, fuel, and fertilizer in this province. And it was, as I say, with the exception of maybe our most recent trip to China, likely one of the most profitable trade missions that we have partaken in. I can share. There's an interesting story how we got there, and it actually started a year before COP28. And as you know, we're in various markets around the world. We were, and I was talking with some high-ranking government folks in the Emirates, including their Minister of Energy, Minister of Environment, and they were talking about going to Sharm el-Sheikh and kind of helping ensure that the COP27 was successful. And when they get to COP28, they were wondering if we would come as a province. And I said, well, we'd think about it, not thinking much about a climate change conference. And they said, well, we're going to bring in the nuclear industry. I said, oh, are you? 27 COPs, and no one has invited the nuclear industry, which seems odd. Then they said, yeah, we're going to invite the oil industry in as well. I said, that's courageous. 27 COPs, and the oil industry has certainly been persona non grata at every COP up until that point. And so I told them, I said, you do that. And I said, we'll bring ours. I said, we'll bring our uranium mining industry and the connections we have to the nuclear industry. And we will engage actively our partners in the energy sector and our ag sector. And I said, we'll come tell our story about how, from a sustainability perspective, we are actually an ethical perspective. We're producing the products that we produce and provide to over 160 countries each and every world. And so we invested some money in our booth there. We had a little criticism from it here from the opposition, which I was proud to take because of what we were able to accomplish over there. And at the end of that conference, we had a few high-ranking folks from the Emirati government that came by. And this was truly valuable for me, and I haven't told this story publicly, but they came by and we just had a little meeting in a little booth we had in our exhibit there. And he said to me, you remember a year ago when we said what we were going to do with the oil industry and the nuclear industry, and you said you were going to come and you were going to put on a presence on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan? I said, yes, I remember that well. He said, well, you certainly did. He said, you have been a tremendous part of this show. Coming from a subnational level, they said it's quite something that we've never seen it before. And they said, I want to say that you are a man of your word, and how much they appreciated that. And our relationship with the Emirati people, government, industries has been incredibly strong from that point. And that's how you build relationships around the world. And when you think about the relationship that we have in a commercial space, whether it be investment in Saskatchewan industries or whether it be with DP Ports and their connections around the world, right into the Port of Vancouver and the Port of Prince Rupert, and the connections our ag industry has with the largest port company in the world, it's gone a very long way for Saskatchewan agriculture and Saskatchewan industry. So that's how you form relationships. And we try to do that in country after country. So it was, I don't know what you thought of it, Kristjan, but it was, I think it was one of the most successful trade missions that we've embarked on, ironically at a climate change conference.
Yeah, I always said there we go. I always said that, we've talked about it a few times on the podcast. It was super interesting, right? Part of it was we do presentations on agriculture, whether I was doing one with you or some of the mines I was with. And, they had brought up regenerative and zero till. And it's like, guys, we've been doing this for 30 some years. Yeah. I'm not even sure I ran an air seeder that wasn't zero till.
And I'm 40 years.
Yeah. So it changed my, I'd have been on the middle. I like testing on check writers. So if people want to write me money for carbon, I'll sell it to them. But I didn't like the preachiness of it prior to that. But what it showed me there was specifically Saskatchewan producers and Western Canadian producers, we're checking 90+% of the boxes that they want to see. So now we can go say, hey, we can say we're doing this. And and where's the check? Like, let's quit talking about it. So that part was, was super interesting. And just, even I took my wife and kids with me because we made a bit of a trip out of it. And like, I don't think we've been on a vacation where we felt that safe. And honestly, for the kids to just learn a bit about the culture and go out in the desert, it was, we'll never forget it as a family, let alone what it did for the business.
Kristjan walked in that place and he just banged the jukebox just like Fonzie, and I tell you, he lit the place up. I was more like Chachi, but Kristjan, he was Fonzie.
Now, I want a disclaimer, Hebes. I'm pretty sure you paid your own way just so we don't get the comments that Scott gets all the time.
I 100% paid my own way there. Yeah, I already took that comment on social media because I agreed to do one media thing with Scott.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we'll let's pivot then. So we're on the trade mission talks. Let's walk us through, obviously, pretty big win in China, but I think it actually started, quite a few months ago, right? With you and Cody made the first trip over, which personally I believe was pretty invaluable, not only for the Saskatchewan federal relationship, but what it probably allowed the Prime Minister and yourself to accomplish this time. So you want to walk us through right back to probably started last September, the headway?
Yeah, it even started prior to that, and I would actually take it right back to 2019, and I'll draw the connection to 2019 in just a moment. And you don't often know these connections till they matter later, and in this case, 6-7 years later. But yeah, we had kind of through conversations with the the Chinese ambassador who I met with just last week when I was in on Ottawa as well. And he's quite satisfied with the way everything has gone, as we are, because there's a restoration of agricultural trade largely, and I think there's some opportunities for us in particular in the energy space with some of the MOUs, maybe even forestry as we move forward. And, there is an opportunity for us to likely double our exports to China in the next short while, a very realistic opportunity for Saskatchewan and Alberta and Canada more generally. But it did start last fall when I was actually talking to the ambassador, the Chinese ambassador to Canada, and he said, I haven't been a premier in China for 6 years. You should come. And I said, well, and there's a reason why we haven't been there for the last 6 years, and I won't get into those details. However, you know what? If a premier does come to China to break that dry spell, I said, I agree with you. It should be Saskatchewan. And I said, so let's put it together. But I said, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not coming to hang out and just to hang out at the hotel and walk up and down the streets. So I said, I'm going to need your help because I want to meet with the highest levels of the Chinese government with a full intent on engaging with eventually removing these tariffs. And he said, I will help you with that. And so then I thought, well, if I'm going to go, and I've always said this, it isn't going to be Premier anybody, including me, and President Xi standing up and saying, hey, we got a trade deal. It has to be the Prime Minister, right? And so, I'd offered to Prime Minister Carney, both privately and publicly, that he should join me. Now, he had offered, he said he wouldn't come. And listen, I understand why. That by the time you get your Prime Minister there with the President, you want to be at the end of the negotiation and be able to move forward with something concrete. But he offered Cody Blois. And at first I thought, But then actually I talked with Kristjan, with you and others, and Cody's words, not mine. He'd said he was ag minister for a hot minute before the election. And, in fairness, he gave that quite a bit of effort in the short time he was there, engaging with, ag producers and farm groups across the prairies. I would say he gave it as much or more effort than probably what we've seen for a number of years. That legitimate effort, regardless of political stripe and history, I think it was appreciated. And it was appreciated by me. And so I was quite positive on Cody coming. And I'm glad I was. And as a lot of credit to Cody Blois, he was back in market a few times after we were there with China. Well, I guess back to our visit in September, we actually met with both of the organizations that had tariffs on, and there's two of them that had tariffs on our seed and meal and pulses and oil and pork and seafood and all of those sorts of things. One was called GAC, General Administration of Customs China, I think it stands for, and the other was Ministry of Commerce. And we met with both of those at very, very high levels. And thanks to the ambassador for helping us. Our China trade office is integral in lining up those meetings as well as, and those trade offices are invaluable through our trade and export development ministry. actually one of those, I think it was GAC. The don't tell anyone this, but the embassy and the ambassador hadn't been able to meet with at that point in time, and so we were very fortunate that through our provincial office we were able to align that meeting. And sometimes there's a little less scrutiny on a subnational meeting with the organization than maybe the national government or the prime minister. So Cody was back in market with ministers. I think he was in attendance when and again I'll get criticized from my conservative father for giving the Prime Minister Carney credit, but he advanced meetings with Premier Lee, had a meeting on the sidelines in South Korea with President Xi, all ultimately to allow Cody and various ministers to keep advancing the conversation, and then we were able to come back in January and have the bulk of those tariffs removed, and I think. The products that they were reduced and removed on have done two things. One, last week we had 600,000 tons on the way to China. That's a good thing. You're seeing a little bit of upward price pressure. That's a good thing for the canola everyone was sitting on, and you probably have a bin or two yourself, you guys. And but second, it will provide us some certainty for our cropping intents for next year, which I think is doubly impactful as well. The connection back to 2019. We're sitting in the meeting, and I got the opportunity, I suppose, and I'm fortunate to sit alongside the Prime Minister and listen and hang on every single word that came out of his mouth, even the odd one that I may not have agreed with or wondered why he said it. We might get to that in a moment. However, the ambassador was across the table, Premier Lee was across the table. And a fellow by the name of Minister Wong, who's the Minister of Commerce there. All of them very aware of what Saskatchewan brings to the conversation in not only food, but potential for maybe some oil exports and other opportunities moving forward, but also aware of what we've added to this, what is now becoming a much more positive conversation over the course of the last decade. So the Minister of Commerce, Minister Wong, he in a previous life, going back to about 2019, was the Premier of the Heilongjiang province. When I was there on my first visit in 2019, he had hosted us for a state supper, and we'd engaged with him for the better part of a day back in 2019. And so we were able to recount, the relationship going back that far. And at the end of the day, in these market-based trade agreements that we have around the world, it isn't entirely dependent on well, I actually would argue that it is. If you have any hope of, finding your way through, some of these trade-related, tariff-related challenges that we seem to have all too often in China and India and other large markets, it helps. To be able to relate to the fact that, in 2019, we had this supper together. It was good to see you back in September of last year. And we're back here again now to not only restore some of the trade that is good for the importers in China, but good for the exporters in Canada, but then to build on that into the energy space and maybe into the forestry space as we move forward. And so it's still a people business and person-to-person business. And I think we can be thankful for that. So a lot of credit to Cody. Prime Minister Carney did what he said he was going to do on engaging in this file. And, now I think, to speak as a true Canadian, we now have we actually have a cap on the imports of Chinese EVs of 49,000, which we never had before. And so I think a real positive all around.
I got a few questions on the Prime Minister, but I got to go to my favorite one was, I wanted you to walk me through your mindset of your social media increase from the Mimi where we heard the New World Order and Scott gave the lifted eyebrow that obviously went pretty wild across the world.
So, I didn't really have phone or much to work on there, and so I didn't see someone had told me that your chubby face is all over the internet.
You're trending,
and And so anyway, they said what it was, and I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I know exactly when that happened." But I said, "I don't know what my face looked like, but I know what was going through my hell." I was like, my head, and it's like, bloody hell! Like this is going to ruin a really good moment in agricultural trade and
Yeah.
international relations. And sometimes when people will argue me with, they'll argue with me on this, and they're more than welcome to. But I don't know if sometimes maybe not everyone quite understands have the interpretation behind things they say. And I think the Prime Minister had spoken to it after, and I had spoken to it as well. But yeah, at that moment, and I didn't see the meme till a number of days later, but at that moment I was like, geez.
It came straight across your face. We knew what you were thinking. But like you said, his communications team maybe hadn't updated him on WF and Carl Schwab and all that stuff that everyone else had seen for the last 2 or 3 years, right? But I want to go down that path though too. Is that so? One of my frustrations as a citizen with politics is it seems like instead of having an election cycle and then I'm going to say a get shit done cycle, we some of the groups are just in constant election cycles, right? And that's what I find right now is that sometimes you got to compare what you have to what you had, and I don't think anyone could argue that Carney is a large step up compared to what we've had over the last 10 or 11 years. And I'm sure you'd have a comment on that. And so far, we have to work with them. They won I talk about agriculture. Like the agriculture industry doesn't turn on and then shut off based on an election cycle. I put a crop in every single year. It doesn't matter who's running the province or who's running the country. And Evan and I talk about this lots. And all we care about is what's better for agriculture, and not just for us, but for the province and for the country. And so, I give you credit for improving that relationship, and it'd be good to get your opinion on the opportunities you see ahead because of that.
Yeah. I can be pretty frank about the relationship that I have with in particular, the Prime Minister right now. Is he won the election. I didn't vote for him. However, he is a Prime Minister, and if I want to get a trade deal signed to restore some trade in China, I need the Prime Minister there to do it. I'm going to go to India here in the not too distant future, and hope to do some good work in India as well on a number of files. Uranium. We have some tariff on some pulse crops there that we'd like to advance, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. On the and I just say this about the Prime Minister as well. I'm happy to have as I said, I voted for someone else in the federal election. However, I'm happy to have a guy there representing Canada, acting on some opportunities that we've tried to help bring forward. That is committed to signing that trade agreement when it's available, and isn't asking if he can go do yoga on the Great Wall, for example. And I've been in both those situations, and I'll take a guy that's ready to sign the trade deal any day of the week, regardless of political party. And I was out in Ottawa this past week as well, and the former Prime Minister Harper had some words around. We have political differences in this country, and I certainly do from the Liberal Party of Canada often, or at least over the last decade often. Right now, in the very uncertain world that we have, I think most notably with our largest trading partner, the United States of America, we need to set those aside. Not entirely, but to some degree, to ensure that we are putting our nation, our province, our industries that are creating wealth in our communities ahead of virtually everything else, including at times, the political spats that I kind of enjoy. I'll be honest with you, but you have to do what's right on behalf of the people that we represent. And so, if Prime Minister Carney is a lot better than the last guy. Let's call it what it is, right? He's sharper, and he's taking great steps in elevating Canada's credibility in the international space. We've always felt it needs to be paramount for us to. We're 1.2 million people. We export to over 161 countries. We need a little bit of credibility when we get on a plane. So we're happy to see, those types of things. Maybe some regulatory reform here at home. We're getting a little a little hairy, scary there with the regulations in our nation over the last decade and some of the costs of doing business. And so we're starting to see some movement in that space. It probably won't be enough for myself and for others, but at least it's some. And that, those are all, I think, generally positive. What do I see ahead in this space? Really choppy waters in the short term, like really choppy waters in the short term for investment attraction, for who's your friend and who may not be your friend tomorrow, or who's your ally, and who can you rely on? Really, really uncertain waters in this space, which I think I would say two things. Is one is it's more important for us as Canada and as Saskatchewan to be in those markets. Ensuring that we're hanging on to the market share that we currently have, but also in those markets to take the opportunity to expand, whether it be higher value markets or expanded markets when they become available. And they are. And I think therein lies the opportunity, is in these very choppy, murky waters. There are opportunities galore, and we need to be there to take advantage of them. There's numerous you look at just some of the pricing in some of the mining space, uranium, some of the heavy metals, the talk about rare earths and things, and you look at what we're up to here in this province, and that's all good for our provinces. We see, I've spoken many times of the investments that we're seeing land here, whether it be the largest investment by the largest mining company in the world, the BHP project. That's the largest single investment that's ever landed in Canada. We saw an alumina find the other day. We have, two uranium mines that have all the provincial approvals, finding their way through the federal approvals shortly. A third one on the way. We're going to, sign some positive things. I think in that space in India here in a month or 5 weeks. So the opportunities that lie ahead of us, whether it be climbing that value chain, continuing to climb that value chain in agriculture. Also continuing to produce more, and then finding those higher value markets around the world for our ag products, but also attracting some of that investment into the mineral space. I talked earlier of the opportunities to export some more oil out our west coast to some of the Asian markets. That much of that can come from that Lloydminster, North Battleford plate. So the future for Saskatchewan in what is a very, very uncertain time right now, I'm probably more bullish on it today than ever. But that isn't to say it's a sure thing. It's not a sure thing at all. But we have to be there, and I like our chances when we're in the room.
Before you keep going, Hebes, I gotta give Scott a little bit positive here. I saw on Twitter today he's still flying economy back and forth from Ottawa, so he's saving tax dollars money.
Yeah.
No, we generally do.
Yeah. Well, I always snicker, like, so the last, obviously completely agree with you. I mean, the last decade has been pretty rough for provinces getting along with the federal government, and not specifically provinces in the West, but kind of my analogy now is like the Olympics coming up. How crazy would we be to send an Olympic team from one individual province or just from Ottawa? We get our ass kicked, even though we're pretty good hockey players. We send the best players in the country. And so over time, hopefully, right, that all can get needled together, that the provinces in the country on the big topics can agree and just put the best foot forward. And obviously oil going off the West Coast or EVs into Ontario causes a little bit of interline arguments. But when it comes to certain things, we have to have a Team Canada approach. Now, I'm assuming, though, if I was to quiz you on, say, firearms, the Liberal Party of Canada is not going to get you to come over to their side of thinking.
That's terrible policy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You have 9 provinces that say it's a terrible policy and still moving on it. So it's unfortunate that they continue to double down on a policy that not only is bad, it just simply isn't going to work. No one's going to enforce it. You certainly can't in Saskatchewan. I joke we have it is, they are going to change the law, so there is going to be some legalities to it, but nobody's coming to get your gun in Saskatchewan. And if they wanted to, they would need a provincial license, and that's that's a department in government that we just don't have the resources to fund at the moment, and we won't for some period of time. And so as long as I'm hanging around this room, there's never going to be a license provided to anybody to come get your firearms. So good luck.
I just thought it was good for the listeners to hear that you might. I completely agree with you working with Carney on getting canola moving and tariffs removed, and as everybody should, but they don't have to automatically assume we're going to agree on everything.
Yeah. And I think such is business. Like, line up where you can, and let's work together where we can, and where we don't agree, we're not going to agree.
Yeah. So my one other kind of thread I'd like to pull is, and this is a bit of a personal opinion, I'd like your theory on it, is when you look at all the resources we have, one of the other countries in the world that has a lot of them would be Russia, and they're not really in a great position to capture this opportunity. So how do we make sure Saskatchewan specifically, but Canada really does try and capture this opportunity? Because I agree with you. I think the volatility between China and the U.S. it's going to be volatile for a little while here, right? But as you said, sounds like you're headed to India to do some agreements there, but at the same time, get agreements done in India, but you still have to maintain that trade with China and the U.S. But that volatile times usually open up opportunities, and one of the biggest players that would compete with us is in a real hard spot to compete. Yeah,
they're in, unfortunately, an acquisition mode that is not in anybody's best interest, in particular the people of Ukraine. And we've been very supportive provincially, and I think thankfully from a national perspective, of the Ukrainian defense of their country there. But you're right. You speak to all this volatility around the world, and a significant amount of it coming from our largest ally and trading partner in the United States of America. And it's really, I think, the second Trump presidency, and I was down there just before Christmas, and we met with, Secretary Bessent and Ambassador Greer and Secretary Lutnick. And to think that, America would be taking this type of a trade position with Canada was really, beyond comprehension just even a year and a half ago. But here we are. And I would say Prime Minister Carney said a couple of statements, nothing on the firearms that I agree with, but a couple of statements that I do agree with. And the one would be, we need to do what we can to determine our own destiny. And so there is an opportunity in this time as well for us we'll get to dealing with the Americans. They will still be our largest trading partner, and they will still be likely our largest ally in a post-Trump world. But it might be somewhat different as well, and I think we need to realize that. And so, this speaks to the importance of not only restoring trade with a country like China, not because we want to adopt, communism and become part of the New World Order and all of these things, but we want to sell them some canola, man, and maybe some oil. And those are two very, very different things. And the same with India. There's some opportunities for us to, really expand, things like canola sales in India. And so India is over 1 billion people. You get 2% of that market. That's significant. That can be really significant for the degree of canola that we produce. And we work closely with the ambassador and some of Prime Minister Modi's ministers on what that actually might look like, and engaging India's people in buying more canola oil, for example, rather than palm or whatever it is they're utilizing now. So there's opportunities in this in this uncertain time. And I go back to I talk about the food. And there's opportunities for us, and we're seeing some of this come to fruition in some of the canola oil investments that have happened. And we're able, I think, now to move forward with some of them coming in, and maybe even try to, land another investment in that place. And we're always looking, and there's always interest. But in the mineral space, in the energy space as well, we have some tremendous opportunity there. And that's good that's good in general for our Canadian economy. And I said it's good in general for the communities where we live, when we have those jobs and that wealth coming into our communities. I would just close with this as well. And you both would be well aware of, about every 5 years, we manage through a little bit of either a tariff tiff or non-tariff barrier into a country like China. Nothing would please me more in addition to selling $5 or $6 billion of canola there, sell another 10 or 20 billion dollars of oil and another 5 or 10 billion dollars of a few other products. And then, when you get into a little bit of a disagreement over something or another, maybe it's not always canola that's the target each and every time. And spread that out a bit. And so, a little bit maybe selfishly from a Saskatchewan perspective, I think there's some other, opportunities for us to, one, expand trade, two, expand how we create wealth in our communities and jobs, but three, to take a little bit of the target off that one industry that I think we dealt with in 2015, again in 2020 on some oil, and then most recently to a much more severe extent across the board. So I'm pretty bullish on our opportunities, determining our own destiny, really taking the opportunity to advance and increase the in the mining, the value added that we have in the province by attracting investment here. Case in point, back to COP and all of the, and there's a lot of investment entities there that we're looking at Saskatchewan. And then two is engaging and expanding some of that market access for our products in those non-U.S. markets. And we'll deal with the U.S. and we'll get back to dealing with the U.S. and we'll always deal with them in a big way. But this is an opportunity for us, I think, to expand some of those markets elsewhere. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's us taking care of ourselves. And man, in this province, that's kind of how it's always been.
Hebes, I want to steal one of your questions from you because I want you to get your answer in here too. So I know, Scott, you and Minister Merritt obviously have the FPT meetings coming up here in the future. And I'd like to know some of your thought process going into those. And then Hebes, obviously I know you're in Ottawa next week, so I kind of want to hear your side of it too. So.
Yeah, I'd maybe just start. One is very first FPT meeting I ever went to was an ag meeting. Jerry Ritz was the minister. And the minister for Ontario was Premier Wynne, because she was the ag minister for that first year. We didn't get along so good. I think I have that effect on Liberal Christmas. Anyway, that aside, Lyle didn't go because he had something else going on, so he sent his legislative secretary, and that was me, and I was a deer in the headlights there. But I did learn very quickly. Saskatchewan plays a very outsized role in the leadership at the Ag Minister's FPT. We have the most significant, ag industry. I'd say just global leading on every front, whether it's production, marketing, everything that we do as good as anywhere in the world, and producers can be very proud of that. But there's some challenges as we look ahead, and here's one that wouldn't be a surprise for producers. And in particular this year when, our margins are a little tight, is the cost of production in agriculture. People talk about the dollars per acre coming in, and the cost of land has been increasing, but the cost of production is, gone up markedly from, when I was actively involved back in the early to mid 90s, and significantly. And, with that comes, some of the costs that are cost shared between producers, federal government, provincial government around some of our, business risk management programs, and, and the role that the private sector plays in that space with some income insurance, and so this is a challenge. Most notably, I think it's a challenge at the farm gate, but it's also a challenge for the the liquidity of those programs where we have a touch as well, because the numbers are getting real big, real big. And, I think we all felt that a couple of years ago in certain areas of the province when we didn't have the best crop. But so Donna Harper always used to say when she said you should run for this position, and she said it'll be easy. Don't worry about it. And then she quickly told me after, maybe Jim Ryder did, well, if it was easy, anybody would do it. The same holds true for ag production and trying to balance those numbers that literally have, likely tripled in the last decade or decade and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I actually looked at my old TPAP notes, Schauder. So when I went down in 2008, I had our total cost of production at $263 an acre.
God, I wish.
Right. So since 2008, we're, basically a double, right? Call it, not, depending on the crop. So I completely agree. I think that causes pain for both producers and for governments on the risk side. But, my general themes for FPT, obviously BRM is always a big thing because it's a huge chunk of the federal and the provincial budget, and we're getting to be less and less % of the vote. And so it needs to, I have some pretty strong opinions on how we could change some things, and I'll probably talk about those in Ottawa and then maybe give feedback on a later episode, right, on all the different programs. But I think also, Premier already talked about all the red tape and regulations. So, I mean, you look at things like CFIA and PMRA being under environment instead of under agriculture, and it's taken away them being looked at through an economic lens. Because in my mind, health and safety of people and animals, that's just a rule to play the game, and we all agree with that. But the red tape there has really slowed down products coming into Canada. I also think this, I don't know where it came from, but more and more meetings I do, we're getting mad at companies for investing in ideas outside of Canada and companies that would be good for agriculture. And in my mind, no, like I want to import great ideas, great talent, and great products, and I want to export everything we grow. Yeah. Hopefully value added. So if for us to think that, the zero till that that got invented in Saskatchewan, basically, if we're going to come up with every one of those ideas just because we're from here, we're dreaming. We want to come up with all the best ideas around the world and see how they could implement here. So I think that, just that economic lens on how we come in with money. And then, I mean, I'm a big fan of a lot of the large companies in agriculture, but at the same time, we've got some oligopoly problems, right? Whether that be banks, whether that be equipment manufacturers, whether that be fertilizer, whether that be chemical. And I know a lot of the people that run them, good people, they put a pile of money in R&D. But the fact of the matter is the less number of people you have playing in the business, the less innovation you have on how we do business. So you look at all the options available when it comes to capital on commercial real estate. Pension funds are doing debt sides of that. Equity players are. The banks are doing it. They're not buying up real estate in Saskatchewan, but they're providing the debt side of it. Yeah. And yet in agriculture, there's almost none of that. Right. So I think that innovation on how we deal with some of the things we do in agriculture is some doors we probably need to look at on the FBT agreement.
Yeah. And there's a few differences there on, who can and can't own farmland and things that are pretty sensitive as well. I think necessary to some degree as well. On the BRM piece, the risks there are kind of twofold, and the cost of production increasing, I think, makes everyone realize what the risks are. But the first risk, I would say producers have done an incredibly good job at alleviating, and that's production risk. This last year we grew, probably the average or maybe even slightly above average crops up in our area. It wasn't a good year. We had like 3-5 inches of rain. I mean, to grow the bushels that we did on the rain that we had, we need a lot of snow now and some pretty good rains in the spring to get back at it. But, credit to the producers with all of those, the zero till, the fertility, everything that they do, spraying on the right day rather than the right week. And it's incredible what they can pull out of just a few inches of rain. And I know you've seen that in your area over the years as well. So the production risk is, I think, alleviated to an incredible degree relative to, we probably had a similar amount of rain in 1988. We had a disaster. We did not have one this year. And so that's good. The second is the market access risk. That's what we spent the first part of this program talking about. And the things you just mentioned, Kristjan, about, doing business in the innovation idea space, that actually opens up market access opportunities for you. It solidifies the relationships. I said earlier that trade is thankfully still to a degree dependent on person to person, not entirely, but it doesn't hurt in any way. And that's where you really, I think, cultivate those relationships is when you're sharing and co-investing in that innovation space and then implementing them in different parts of the world, including our parts. So that's helpful in the market access space.
So we've kept them about 50 minutes, Hebert, so I'm going to let you finish up with your last 3 questions just in recognition of his time.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I'm too direct with my answers, I imagine.
Hey, you're pretty good. One day I'm going to leave one question off the board, but one day we will get into it. Is I'm completely on board with the critical mineral and natural resources absolutely leading Canada globally, right? But man, oh man, we got to figure out a rural economic development, rural healthcare strategy, because everybody that, call it 80% of the people that are going to work in those industries don't live in cities. And in my opinion, it's an area that we need to put a lot more effort into. I got a couple crazy ideas, but it's probably a whole nother podcast.
Just listen in the next month or so where we very much, I hope, are going to start a conversation about using current innovation and bringing that into healthcare delivery in a pretty significant way. But opening up the conversation on, how that we can continue to ensure that innovation that was available today, wasn't available yesterday, is being used in how you and I are accessing healthcare regardless of where we live. So let's come back to that one after about 5 weeks.
Perfect. Yeah, I got some ideas I can throw at you too. So yeah, so we always finish the podcast with, to be honest, they're Kristjan's, I call them his 3 selfish questions for our curious nature, but they're softballs. The first one is, you've met a lot of pretty interesting people in your life. What's the best piece of advice you think you've ever got? Or some of your favorites?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to a piece of advice from a previously elected MLA. He gave it to me on November the 8th, 2011, about 7:30 in the morning. That was the day after the first election that I was elected in, and I was down having a coffee, and he came by, and he gave me a few pieces of advice, and I remember them all. But this was one that I found interesting, and maybe people that are thinking about running for politics or dealing with politicians could just remember this at times. He told me, he said, I've been watching you around town. He says, you like to get stuff done. I said, yeah, you bet. That's why I ran. And he said, you need to know. He says, I was down there for a while. He says, government is a big wheel. And he said, it moves along very slowly. And he said, if you get good at what you do, he said, you pay attention when you get down there. And he said, if you start to understand things, and he said, you actually become an effective politician. And I'm not saying you will, but you might. And he said, if you do, he says, you can get beside that wheel. And he said, you can nudge it a little bit to the left, change its course. He says, you can nudge it a little bit to the right, and you can change its course. But he said, you should also know that you should not try to stand in front of it and stop it, because he said it's ran over a hell of a lot better men than you. And, I just never forget that when we're trying to, change course on things here is, sometimes it's frustratingly slow. We're still faster than universities, and I say that to you. But it's frustratingly slow, and at the federal level, even slower because it's larger. And when you're trying to get something done, I find that incredibly frustrating. However, maybe when things aren't going the direction that I want them to, like maybe the last 8 years federally, maybe they don't get too far away on you because it's slow as well, and you can try to bring some of that back. And that's I think some of the work that we have to do as Canadians right now is in a sensible way is bring some of these things back to reality rather than what we're essentially figments of someone's imagination. So I always remember that story. That's not one that I got from somebody abroad. I probably have a few of those as well. But a local farmer that ran for politics back in the 80s and met me for coffee about 8 or 10 hours after I was first elected, and that was some of the first early political advice I had as an elected member.
I've heard that one from you before. That one's a really good one. Yeah. Okay. Second question. What's your favorite book you've read?
When I read, I will try to read from, not everyone will believe this, try to read from one perspective and then the other. Like I read a book, Bill Clinton's book, and then I tried to read George W.'s. And those are 2 different perspectives, right? Within the same party, years ago, I read John Kristjan's book, but then I thought I better read Paul Martin's, right? And they're 2 very different perspectives, in particular about one another. You got to love liberal politics. Actually, one of my favorite books is a pretty simple read. But he was he was one of 2 favorite hockey players I had, 2 very different hockey players. I loved Wayne Gretzky, of course, grew up watching him. But I also loved Bob Probert because he was such a loyal guy. And, there's nobody that didn't want to play on Bob Probert's team, right? And there's nobody that didn't want to, unfortunately or fortunately, in Bob's case, if you're going to the bar, you probably wanted to go with him too. And
Yeah.
for multiple reasons, I suppose. But he had there's a book on him called Tough Guy, and just because I liked him so much, I really enjoyed that book. One book of interest, and it kind of borders into that conspiracy theory space a bit, but it's a good book. It's written by John Perkins. I read it quite some time ago, and I think there's a sequel to it now, and I read that more recently. But it's Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And there's an interesting book on World Bank, probably getting into the WEF stuff and whatnot. And it's and I kind of appreciate it now because it's out there a bit. I don't think the world is all like that, but there's elements that you got to keep your eye on.
I'm thinking Gavin McKenna was probably wishing Bob Probert was with him this week. He's in a bit of heat on a little tussle at the bar, but hopefully it doesn't drop him down.
Yeah, all indications are maybe somebody needed it.
Yeah, I don't know too many Canadian hockey players that if they heard the wrong thing about their mom wouldn't maybe not think before they took action. So
those things happen.
So the last question, and this is our one with agriculture. So we all agree that agriculture, specifically in Saskatchewan and in Canada, can be or is a powerhouse. But if you had a magic wand to do something right now that you think would set it up the best for 10, 20, 50 years from now, what would you do?
Go to the maximum value-added space and really be in the business of exporting ingredients as opposed to any canola seed or any wheat, any of the raw agri-food products. It's an entirely different conversation when you're in those markets, when you're talking about ingredients, food-based ingredients. Entirely different conversation when it comes to tariff talk and things like that. And many of the jobs then stay right here in the province as well. And so we see that just to, I think, a small degree with the canola crush industry that we have. Starting to see some of that space entered into in like the pulse fractionation, the protein fractionation space. But I think and in particular in rural Saskatchewan, and I maybe just close with the synergy I see on rural and urban Saskatchewan in relation to industries like this or mining or anything. But I think that is, from an agriculture perspective, that's the quickest way, and it isn't fast, but it would be the quickest way for us to inject literally billions of dollars, additional dollars, into the ag sector while providing some, I think, some market stability as well, or more market stability than maybe we have with boatloads of raw product floating around the world. And here's why Saskatchewan's so well poised to do it. Many will say, well, we're not close enough to the market, so you have to ship the raw product and they'll process it there. That's not true. Actually, Saskatchewan is very well poised to do it because we do have a rural area where we have resources. Ag land is a resource. We have the potash mines, uranium mines, aluminum fine, oil fields, all in rural Saskatchewan. Who brings value to them? And Kristjan, I'm sure many of the folks that work on your farm live in urban Saskatchewan. They'll live in a town and a village, maybe Mooseman or somewhere, out in that space. Many of the people that work in the potash mines and the oil sector, they live in Lloydminster, Saskatoon, Lanigan. And so the people that really bring value to that rural resource often are located in our urban areas, our towns, our villages, and our cities. And so the synergy is great in Saskatchewan, where those rural resources plus that urban expertise, the people, really adds up to something greater than two. And so I think we're very well poised to take those next steps. In fact, I think we're taking them now. And so if I could wave a magic wand and encourage something to happen in agriculture that was really going to inject some financial stability and more dollars into the industry, it would be for us to climb that value chain and employ that many more people and provide that market stability to the farm gate.
Perfect. I want to thank you, Scott, for coming on, obviously, and thanks, Heb, for obviously this is your connection, not mine. So it's been a good hour of me learning and listening. So anything you want to finish with, Hebs, before we cut her off?
I'll just say thanks, not just to both of you. look at how ag has changed. My dad wasn't doing podcasts when he was farming. We were growing up on a mixed farm. Well, in a way, I guess we were, but it was the party line, and you'd pick it up without pulling the button, and you could listen to the neighbors. So it's a little bit different back in the day. Now I'm dating myself, but the spreading and disseminating of information, and actually information like this that's coming from real people. And I would say, with the exception of myself being a politician, real, credible people in the two of you. And I say that as a joke, I hope, but it's important. There's a lot of information out there in the world and the internet and social media. And, I don't know what percentage of it is true and how all the algorithms and, I worry about those things moving forward, where people are getting information from. And I say thanks to the two of you for, it's pretty hard to, have the dissemination of something that, there's nobody on this call that's going to say something that they know is wrong. I can't say the same for the information that you garner off the internet. And so this is a very, very valuable place to spend some time for anybody that comes on and has this chat with you. And I think it's in particular important to us in this province because of the importance of this industry to the whole dang province. It really is. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, and there's been a lot of big wins lately. Obviously, canola is just one of them. And
I got a black hat. That's a pretty big
You got a black hat. Yeah, we'll. You want to know what? Shout. I think he gets. I think we'll send him a Hebert Group hat for being on the podcast.
We're trying to get him less hate, not more Hebes.
Well, that's
I don't know
true.
where I got this one, but it says on it, Crunch Punch Chicken.
There you go.
I have no idea where I got that. Next to the canola deal in Beijing, I did play a hockey game. I haven't played a hockey game in 12 years.
In Beijing.
I got an assist. And so I got the puck on my desk, my Beijing one hockey game, one assist. We played at the Beijing Hot Wings. And it was pretty good.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I'm assuming you had a size advantage in that game.
No. One guy got in a fight. He was a bigger fella, so he got suspended for a game, and I got to use his equipment, so it worked out perfect. However, I did wonder a little bit, what kind of a league am I going into if he's suspended for fighting? But it was really good, and I couldn't help but think that I think the president had said that the Chinese are the first thing they're going to take away is hockey. Hockey's alive and well in Beijing. I was playing.
That's awesome.
We might as well end there. That's too good not to end. So thanks again, Scott.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.